know a lot of people have been locked in closets. Well, it was fun because I remember we would go back and forth from England to America. One time we went in the public pool, the baths, and everyone got out of the pool. It was the funniest thing just seeing everybody get out. And my mom said, I think it's us.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chats. We have the fabulous Sally Mullins with us. She is a comedian, writer, but today we're going to get down to an interesting experience she had from growing up in England and the US, going back and forth, and after having a lot of sun and a tan, getting into a pool in the UK, and everybody else got out because they thought she wasn't one of them. Join us for the next Cosmic Chats and like and subscribe and join our newsletter to find out more. So let's get to the first question. How would you describe the taste of the banana to someone who's never had one?
Oh, the taste of a banana. Well, first of all, I'll just say it's my favorite fruit. It's nothing like any other fruit. The taste of a banana ice cream, banana pudding is better than an actual banana, but the real banana is the gateway to really good stuff. I'd say it's a creamy taste. It's slightly tangy. It's not an acidic or tart taste in any way. It is the creamiest of the fruits. It's similar to vanilla, and it's more, I would say other fruits it's closer to, it'd be like a mango, but it's a very smooth taste with not very much aftertaste. And the smell is pretty mellow as well. Even if you don't like it or you don't like the texture, you need to get through it in order to get to banana pudding.
Well, that is the most comprehensive answer we've had yet.
Cool, thank you.
So when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
Well, my earliest memory as a child is being shut in a crib in a dark room alone screaming. So I would say I was pretty young, and my parents had read this new book that was popular in England in the late 60s. And it was saying in order to raise, stronger mentally kids, you've got to leave them alone when they're crying. Like they need to be sort of deprived of nurturing. And it was a book that was only popular for a while. It was kind of like a fad diet. Sorry?
Was it the Dr. Spock book?
It wasn't Spock, because I remember Spock. I mean, I'm a hell of a lot older than you, but I remember being raised on Spock once I was like 4 or 5. This was something in the late 60s, and it was sort of like a little craze everyone was trying for a while, and then they pulled out of it. But I do remember just being in a crib and it's dark and I don't know like when it's going to end. So just screaming my guts out. I was probably, an infant or close to 1 or something.
Wow. And you remember that? That's pretty early on.
That's my earliest memory of childhood. Yes.
So that's isolation, abandonment.
It's comedy gold.
So when was your next moment where you perceived a shift change after that? When you were 2?
Yes, there you go. My brother was born.
Oh.
Yes, I was very jealous. He was sick. My parents had to be at the hospital all the time. He had spinal meningitis. And then he finally came home and he was better. And I was very jealous. He was getting all the attention and I was throwing toys and I was really pissed.
Wow. And what was the recourse that occurred for you throwing this tantrum?
Oh, you mean like the punishment recourse? I think they laughed at me. So it was early comedy, early stand-up.
Ah, so this is interesting. So they laughed at you. Do you remember having a response of it feeling good that they were laughing at you?
No, not at all. I remember feeling humiliated.
So locked in a closet, then expressing yourself and being laughed and feeling humiliated. Goodness, that's a lot for under 5, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes. I think comedy to me is all about getting laughs on my own terms. And just to clarify, it wasn't a closet, but it was like a small bedroom in a crib. Sorry. I mean, I didn't mean to, go there. I know a lot of people have been locked in closets.
So that happened. And then as they laughed at you, you were humiliated. And did you close yourself off more? Do you remember making a decision?
I remember isolating more. Yes. Maybe on my own terms this time, but yes, like spending more time by myself. I used to love to write. I was writing and reading really early. So more time in my room. Yeah, I was angry and jealous.
You were angry and jealous. And then how did that develop with your relationship with your brother?
We don't talk now. No. I would say we were all right because we're very different and we did get along, and he was never really on my turf. We were just so different. He's an amazing athlete. So he had all his things he did. I had all my things I did. We were fine when we were kids.
Yeah. So you got along fine. Did you have any other siblings?
No.
No, those are the two of you. So spending more time on your own, how old were you when you first started to read and write?
Very young. My dad said I was reading before I was 2. And I started writing, I'm sure, like 5, writing stories.
And how did that work in the school system? Were you very much more advanced than everyone?
Well, it was fun because I remember we would go back and forth from England to America. And especially in America, sometimes the teacher would say, it was Florida, and she wouldn't feel like maybe dealing with the class for a little while. So she'd say, hey, we're going to have Sally write a story. And at 1:00, you're all going to listen to Sally's story. And so it was sort of like early stand-up.
And that was, how old were you at this point?
Like 6, 7.
6 years old. Now, do you think that part of it was back then you had an English accent?
Yes, absolutely. The teachers in America loved me. And when I would go back to England, those kids would be very mean and pissed off. And then they'd get over it.
Right. But then your accent would change back to English very quickly.
Immediately. Right? It's probably going to change back from just talking to you.
Yes. I bet it will. Mine slides around all the time as well, mainly to be understood.
Yes.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, who are watching or listening, an American accent, especially if you're an English person that takes on any qualities of an American accent, is very much frowned upon. And
it was a small town in England where we were from. And I know it sounds strange, but we were very tan from living in Florida. So when we got home, one time we went in the public pool, the baths, and everyone got out of the pool.
How tan were you?
I can get really tan, but this is just how white this town was. And also this was the 70s. So, I mean, I can probably get as tan as, Latinx. So I was a kid at the time and we weren't using sunscreen. So it was like white hair and extremely tan, very tan.
This was a pool that people didn't know you, presumably.
Right. They didn't know us at all. We had just come back from America. We'd bought a big house in the country and we went in a town like Huddersfield to use the baths. And it was the funniest thing just seeing everybody get out. And my mom said, I think it's us.
Right. In a bit. Oh, Chuck.
Yeah.
Best get out. Oh, take advantage of it. Swim a lap or so, but don't pee in the pool.
Yorkshire accent.
They may think you're brown, but don't pee. So she said that while you were in the pool or when you got out of the pool?
We didn't get out. She said that. She says, well, let's have a swim. I think it's us.
And so did they leave the actual facilities altogether?
I mean, they kind of just like went back into the changing room and we didn't see them again. They kind of just wrapped up their swim. they were like, oh, what,
Okay, let me just get this straight. Knowing some of England, did a manager come out and talk to you? Did people complain?
It was pre-Karen, it's the 70s.
70s. Let's take that resentment, stuff it down in England, not talk about it, but just give you a look.
I mean, barely even. I would think it more like came up at dinner. This family got in the pool. You should have seen them.
But people were used to you chaps, coming and going and sort of getting, because back then to have a tan in England was actually a sign of status because you actually could afford to go away.
You would have thought, but I mean, this was Homebridge, a very small rural town. And I'm going to say 1973,
Right. So I'm trying to look at people were used to you guys, traveling, getting the sun, and then you go to, it's your hometown and they didn't know who you were. Were there any other situations where you had this experience again?
Never. Honestly, that's it. That's maybe why I remember it so well. When we went back to America, the American kids were just like, we love your accent. Let's hear another story.
Now, was that ultimately, you think, a tipping point, being received and welcome, and maybe your family was as well, of wanting to move, the family moving to Florida?
I think my mom wanted to move back because really an American life is easier. It's warmer. The weather in Florida was warmer. We were close to the beach. I think it was just a bit of a better life that we decided to end up in.
And do you agree with her looking back now?
Well, my dad thinks finalizing things in Florida was the worst thing that he did to the family because there was just too much temptation in that state, the 70s and 80s. But I am appreciative of growing up there. I think we did have more opportunities.
Temptation. Now, do you think that temptation would have been the same if you then had moved to a place like London?
I do think it might have been. I think it depends on the person and what they do with it for the most part. But all the time, right place, right time, wrong place, wrong time, these things do happen. That's why in comedy, I tell people, do every gig you get offered unless you have something better to do, because you never know what it'll lead to.
Right. Oh, yes, exactly. So you definitely feel that it was a positive side. You were grateful. And is your brother the same mindset? Has anyone gone back to England?
He went back to England. Yeah, he's back in England and we don't keep in touch. I'm really not sure what he feels about it at all, but he's doing all right,
Yes, yes. So to your dad, and we're just going to talk about individuals, sort of natural personalities. And those of you who are watching or listening who've been around, several children from the same family, right, start to realize that, they come out the chute this way. Okay. That your father's disposition was, it was a bit too much looking back. Did you get a little bit wild and woolly?
Oh, absolutely. My brother, much more so, but I really appreciate my brother being like such a partier in high school. I got away with a lot. I mean, it was Florida in the 80s. So I definitely had a good time in high school. It was public school. You could ditch school in the 80s. You could go off campus and have lunch at a pizza parlor and then show up for your later classes and really not get in trouble at all. So you had a lot of independence.
Now, it sounds to me like you actually have a high IQ. And back then, if I'm recalling correctly, examinations were based on memory capacity versus, now everything can be found out on the internet. It's about how you apply it. Do you have a natural capacity to memorize information?
How did you know? Yeah, I do. I remember everything and it freaks my friends out. And I notice in conversations all the time with people, they're telling me the same story twice. And if it's a good story, I'll let them continue. But I go, this person is only 35 years. I'm 20 years older than them. And they don't remember that we already talked about this when we were hanging out at this show after the set. And it's funny to me that they don't remember that.
Yes, because you clearly have a capacity of memorization, and especially in the Los Angeles area, people don't tend to remember what is told to them. So repeating information, and so to you, it's sort of like, but it is clearly a talent, a gift that you have to remember information.
Well, it helps for comedy, but I will say, like, I don't always listen. I also pretty much obviously have some attention deficit disorder. And often in school, they would just say to my parents, she's so creative, but she's not really doing the class assignment, like it kind of thing. And I think now if that kid were in school, they'd be tested for ADHD and they'd be put on some sort of, stimulant, and for better or for worse.
Right, because the school system now is requiring much more of a workload than it was back then. Yeah. So you would say that your brother's, even though he was younger than you, his exploits allowed you to not receive any sort of like attention so much for doing little few wild things because his was so out there.
Yes, it got me to not get a lot of attention all around. And looking back, that was definitely a good thing. Yeah, I did dabble in a lot of things in high school, and I had a lot of fun in high school. I had a gay best friend. He was a couple of years older than me. We would party on the weekends. We had a lot of fun. Drinking age was 19. So it was just, it was a very fun time in the 80s. I graduated in 1986. I went to see Wham in concert. I really had a wonderful high school experience in public school in Florida.
What would you say now when you see so many 80s references coming back now? Does it bring back positive memories?
Absolutely. And I feel it's because it was so much fun and there was so much great music and good times. And I really, I'm very grateful to have had fun then and still be having fun now. And then a lot of this rock, like the, alternative rock of today, sounds like 80s music to me.
Right. And so how was your parents' relationship when you were in Florida? Did it become more solidified, or were there some situations where you felt people started drifting apart more?
Not drifting apart. I'd say having more rows, like more pressure, because there was a lot of back and forth to England and America, and it was a lot of stress just on the family. And then I would say that they sort of turned their attention on kind of getting my brother and I, through high school. Like they bonded over being good parents, trying to raise their kids.
Right. And then what brought you out to California?
Well, I was ready for a change. I was running a theater in Florida and having a great time running a theater with two really close friends, amazing gay dudes. And I wanted to change. It was like a lot of work, and I've been doing it for about 4 years. So I wanted to move to Greece, just move to Greece and start writing. And then I met a dude, and the dude really wanted to move to LA. I'd never been to LA, but I was like, hey, we're in this relationship. I'll move out to Los Angeles sight unseen. And I did. And I was like, this is beautiful. And then I got into stand-up comedy like a couple years after I moved.
There's several references that you found yourself very close to gay men. And how would you say, referencing back in sort of the 80s time where that was, were you considered unusual because you did that?
Yeah. I'm not going to drop an F-bomb, but I was like an F-hag. I was known as an F-hag. And it was this cool time of discovery because you had people like Boy George, and you had Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and you had like even straight guys wearing makeup, like a lot, more than just David Bowie in the 70s. But a lot of guys were coming out in high school, and I was friends with all of them, and guys were wearing dresses and carrying purses in high school, or like maybe not dresses, but like tunics and leggings. That was where the fashion was going. And dudes were emulating Boy George. And, you know, I was one of the straight girls who hung out with them. And you know what I really like about that was I didn't get hit on as much. You know, it was safer. I didn't get pregnant in high school because I was partying and having fun with a lot of men, but it was very safe, and I was very much looked out for and protected by all of them and defended.
Would you say that something shifted in the mid 90s till about 2000, I don't know, 15, that it went backwards, and now we're seeing Gen Z bringing it more forwards again?
Are you talking about the relationship between straight women and gay men?
Well, that's a great question. More so referencing of men wearing dresses and feeling free, and Boy George, and
Yeah, that's what I see. I see it's coming back, and it feels like the 80s all over to me in a lot of ways. It really
what do you
does.
think it was that brought it to be repressed and stopped? Because remember, in the 80s, there was Reagan, who was very conservative, yet at the same time, the huge mass movement to America from UK artists, David Bowie coming over, people wanting to be in America. It was a high peak of a Freddie Mercury, you know, with Queen. And then it stopped moving forward.
Maybe it was because grunge was the major movement.
I was going to say, I
was going to say grunge, you know, and grunge is like more hetero. Now, during that time, grunge put everything on hold for everyone. Grunge, Gen Z, slackers, very, very hetero, Reality Bites.
Wasn't Reality Bites the Gen X ultimate movie, though, with Ethan Hawke and Winona Ryder?
Not to me it is. It's so freaking boring, man. I find that movie so boring. Like, you have to be... See, I was never a slacker. And a lot of what was going on in the 90s in terms of movies and music, I had to kind of miss out on because I was running a theater school, and then I was moving to California, and then I was getting into stand-up. And, you know, that was sort of like the years like, am I going to get married? I never wanted to have a baby, but it was kind of those years I adopted a dog, and then I got into animal rescue, and I was chasing my tail, you know, and I was like extremely thin and strung out. And I wasn't watching movies or really listening to music enough.
So you had this drive in you, highly intelligent, you had a drive. Would you say that you have a very busy mind?
Yes.
And so have there been points in your life as a creative individual, even though you're expressing your creativity, that this busy mind has impacted your productivity, or you've had to address how your mind is responding to one comment that you've now got a million answers to and you're having a trigger response to?
Yes, I sometimes I say I don't want to be less creative, and I'm not being ungrateful for how creative I am, but sometimes you just want to sit down and be able to focus on one thing and, you know, not have the feeling of FOMO or whatever with so many things flying around.
Right. So the busy mind, and most people will say, I can't come to a meditation practice because my mind is too busy. And that makes sense, because what we're sold is this idea of, well, either you have to be a skinny dude with a long beard and wear a nappy, as we would say in England, but diaper, or you have to be a hot, sexy female, flowing hair to be. And these are just two ridiculous extremes. The idea of meditation, meditato is the Latin word meaning to concentrate on. And who was putting Latin down? It was the monks, right? So their job was to concentrate on that word of the Bible, right? But if you go farther east, the idea is to go within. And it sounds like you're talking about being able to take that time to go within. And when we are with outside influence, there is that FOMO. And if there is this conditioning, especially put in a small room screaming as a child, you are without that reflection of love, right? With a busy mind, having that perpetuate, people often think, oh, I've got to calm the mind down. But the busy mind is simply attempting to find a solution to a problem. But most of the time, we actually don't have a problem. We are going to respond to what we think might be a problem, and usually of missing out, right? I'm not going to get what I want or I deserve, or I'm going to have what I do have taken away, right? And so a busy mind is, I don't know why there is this connotation of it being a bad thing, and that you have to quiet your mind. And, beautiful books have been written about those who've had near-death experiences. And if anyone has, put it down in the comments if you want to hear about it.
Oh, yeah.
The body drops, but the mind is still going. This is consciousness. So the idea to have a mind with nothing, no thing, is actually not achievable. There is awareness, which is very different. That is being completely in the moment. And creativity, when one is in the moment, that's what all the acting schools are for, right?
Yes.
That's about how do we get in the now, right now. And so finding that quiet place is sometimes contrived, contrived is the best word for it. People are thinking that I'm calm, right? I listen to some music, and that's a distraction, because one comes back and now there's all that noise again. Oh, it didn't work. Well, to a retreat is actually to go inward rather than go to a mountain. And you can sit on top of the mountain and close your eyes, and what's there? Your mind. And if we're busy in the world, so I know I myself had a hard time with it. And if you're curious about what we teach, we have an ebook that's free called Vedic Meditation Stories. Yeah. It's the only publication as of right now, as we're talking, that has true stories from individuals who learned the practice and how it changed their lives. This is not edited, not because I'm lazy, but because I wanted someone's true voice to come through. If you have Amazon Prime, it's completely unlimited now. The link will be down there below, and you can check out what it is. But it's really surrendering to who you are right now and allowing the stress, which is causing the FOMO, to be released.
Yes.
Right? Rather than distracting. Right? If I'm distracting from something, that's brilliant. Oh, that was a nice little break, right? But I still haven't got down to the root of the problem, right? The root of it. And if the stress is taken away of it, what you then got is pure creativity.
I do think it is important for artists to have a little more time in their own head than maybe people who aren't in the arts, in order to nurture their own creativity and to let it flow uninterrupted, to give yourself time to compile. Like, that's the feeling I often get. Like, I have all these ideas and jokes and I have no time to, just like categorize them, or that's the FOMO. Like, I'm not going to get to turn these into anything.
Right. And a lot of that is because in Western culture, when children are doing this, we say, come back, come back.
Yes.
But it's actually allowing the brain to process what's been going on. And as we push that out, then when we get to put our head on the pillow at night, guess what's happening? We're attempting to process it. But it's so backed up that people say they can't get to sleep. And what they really want is deep rest.
I did have insomnia all through high school, and maybe it's because of that. Maybe because you're not getting enough time in your own head to process all those ideas and go down those rabbit holes. That's one of the reasons I love running, and I love driving long distances. And also in the shower, that's when I think of a lot of my best jokes, because your mind is just allowed to go. And I say that to people in comedy. I say, sit down with a pen, sit down with a paper, give yourself 20 or 30 minutes. You're gonna start going there, Yes. Look at your notes, compile, so you feel comfortable, like you're getting the things you think of, but also just allow yourself time to go there instead of the.
Right. And this part is it's also for people not just in the sense of the arts, and water is another key element that happens, because there have been many moments people talk about, look at Eureka in the shower. And that water moment, it does go back to when we were in the womb as well, and that sense that allows the mind to drift off, to wander, and then it can come to a place. And running, hiking, in fact, those who are close to mental breakdowns or the very stressed, one of the aspects that doctors will say is go for a walk. Yes. Because running is more stressful on the physiology, if someone especially not done it, but walking, it allows the mind to go to those places and process. And in 2014, it's in PubMed, there's a study that was published, and they took two types of meditation, directive, which is concentrating, and non-directive. And all they did was put people under an MRI. And what blew them away wasn't that the concentration techniques lit up a concentrated part of the mind. It was that the non-directive practices, which happens to be a practice that we teach, had more of the brain left and right lit up, but especially areas that process thoughts and emotions, and then deep rest.
Nice.
And I love it because it's not funded by a particular meditation group. 99% of all studies are funded by people who are proponents of that practice. And this is super simple, super simple. Now, focus practices are great for waking state. I think that is brilliant. But if we want to allow ourselves to go inward and allow that swirl to happen, get that stress out, and then all we're doing is going down to the bottom of the hat and picking up what's already there.
Yeah.
What's already there. And people will say, how did you cognize this? How did this happen? Well, if we look at the movie Star Wars, and they take a moment and go like this, they go in. All of the answers are in. And exactly that pause, being able to get to that pause. And the pause will have noise, and then it won't. Right? And it's catching that one element with it. Well, I've had a delightful chat with you today, Sally.
You're amazing. Did I get my accent back? A little bit, probably, I think.
Well, you definitely said the word row.
Which word?
They were having more rows.
Oh, rows, yes.
And for those of you who don't know what that means arguments.
Yes.
Right?
We try to make everything sound a little sweet. They're having a row.
Well, I don't know about you, but I can definitely say that there was a conditioning that we had, that having a discussion with someone and not agreeing them was not the end of the world. It was simply an intellectual exercise.
Agreeing to disagree.
Right. And the people that I tend to find are okay with agreeing to disagree sounds like individuals like yourself, or more worldly, who have not been so centered in that it's not a personal attack. It's simply a mental conversation. Right.
Thank you. Yes. I don't like to think of myself as, too oppositional. I try to keep an open mind, and I'm friends with many different kinds of people politically, but at some point you sometimes just have to say, maybe we shouldn't talk about this because we feel so different.
Exactly. And let's find the common ground and work on that, because we have to allow people to be who they are.
Yes.
Right.
Agreed.
And with that, thank you so much for joining us on Cosmic Chats. If you want to have Sally back, and I think we should, please pop it in the comments. Please remember to like and subscribe. We really appreciate your love. And we'll talk to you soon on the next Cosmic Chat.
Thanks for having me.
It was a delight.